Greetings all, I'm Bill Vencil. This is Chords of Orion. It's all about ambient guitar music. And I am on the cusp of releasing my 13th album. It's going to be called Layers, and it will be releasing on Tuesday, April the 11th, 2023. I'm really excited about it. What I've got for you on today's video is a breakdown of the mix of the last track on the album. The track is called The Hard Road, and I originally released a simple mix of it here on YouTube about 2 years ago. Before I get into the mix for the album, I'd like to play you just a little bit of that original posting so you can hear the layers. If you're not interested, I've got chapter markers below. You can just skip ahead to the mix. Here we go. I just really like that piece, so I decided, you know what, I'm going to take that and expand it out into a track for the album with some more parts. So that's what we're going to look at, the channels of the various parts and the overall mix. So I've got Logic up, as you can see, and let's talk about that Frippertronics soundscape first. That's here on the track called Audio 2, and let me go ahead and play just a little bit of that so you kind of get a feel for that again. Yeah, so if you noticed, I was just playing some layers, and with the Volante, the Strymon Volante, that was the delay pedal I was using, I had the feedback cranked up pretty far, so after I'm done playing the basic layer, it just continues to repeat over and over and over again for some minutes. At the end of the piece, let me listen to this. Check this out. Yeah. So it's still basically the same loop. It's just getting fainter and fainter and fainter as it goes through the song. It's degrading and decaying out. I like that a lot. All right, let's go ahead and take a peek at the standard guitar part. It's not really standard, but the regular guitar part. It's a baritone guitar, and you saw the way I played it, right? So it's kind of arpeggiated chord patterns. Here's what that sounds like again. Okay, and that guitar part, again, has a delay pedal on it. It's the Strymon Dig, and I've got it set to the classic dotted eighth style delay. I actually have a tutorial on dotted eighth delays. I'll link to it at the end of this video if you're interested. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the mix itself. So since we're on that main guitar part, let's talk about that. So basically, I just recorded it from my pedal board direct into the audio interface and then on into Logic Pro. And I've just added just a few effects. The first is isotope neutron. So let's pull that up here. The first thing I did, I wanted to pull out a troublesome frequency here at about 2.5K. So this looks kind of weird, but it just helped me out. There's a little bit too much clickiness in my pick, and then the way it's delaying through that dotted eighth delay. So I decided to isolate the frequency and pull it down by, looks like about 15 dB or so, or 13.5 dB. Next up is a little bit of, believe it or not, a little bit of a de-esser. And again, this helps mellow out the sound. It's not, I don't normally use de-essers, but I decided to on this track to see how it worked, and I really like the results. So typically a de-esser is used to reduce sibilance in vocal tracks, but you can also use it for different purposes for higher frequencies. All right, next up, I've got another instance of isotope neutron. One of the modules is called Sculptor, and the nice thing about Sculptor is it can dynamically kind of shift the EQ characteristics of your sound. So if you watch the screen, let me go ahead and turn the music on. You'll see what it does. So you can see I've got it limited. I've got the frequency limited between about 100 and 400 hertz. And what Sculptor is doing is dynamically pulling down the EQ as the guitar is playing. It's reacting dynamically to what I'm playing to reduce kind of a muddiness in the recorded sound. Next up is a more standard equalizer. You can see I've just got some tweaks going on here. Little tweak at almost 2K. We pull down a little bit at 208K again to reduce some muddiness, and just rolling off the very high end just a bit. Next up is an exciter, which is basically a saturator. It's adding very low levels of distortion into the sound to kind of mold the sound together and give it a little bit more, a little more analog feel. Neutron has a tape style exciter, so I'm using that to, it's not really emulating a tape deck, but it's adding a little bit of tape style saturation. And then finally, a compressor. And as I play here, you'll see how that's running here. Okay, so you can see, on the graph there, on the readout, that we're just compressing down by a few dB as the guitar is playing. And next, a really nice reverb plugin that I've used quite a bit. It's the Valhalla Shimmer. And as you can see, I've got it set to shift up 1 octave, but the mix is extremely low. So you'll have to listen very, very carefully. Yeah, it's very, 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 very subtle, which is good. I don't want that huge, big shimmery thing going. And finally, I do have a soft tube tape plugin to provide more of a reel-to-reel kind of tape deck sound. Let's take a quick look back at that Frippertronics track. And again, here's what that sounds like. And all I'm doing here is I've got a neutron, isotope neutron, and I'm really kind of just playing with the EQ because these are two different guitars. And what we don't want is the frequency response to be in the exact same places, because then the two guitar tracks will fight with each other. So as you can see, I pulled out a lot of low end on this track, and I'm still using that Sculptor module to pull down potential muddiness, and then I'm using that tape saturation a little bit more. In addition to the Neutron 3 on the Frippertronics track, I'm also using, again, that same tape deck plugin to replicate the feel of a tape deck. I'm also using the FabFilter Pro R reverb plugin. Again, if you don't have the Pro R, no worries. Use the default reverb plugins that come with your recording software. You'll be able to get a great sound. And again, you can hear it's pretty subtle. It's a fairly low mix. All right, so let's go now to instrument 2, and let's talk about that. Here we go. Here comes, here comes, here comes. It's pretty straightforward. It's just a low bass note that's kind of playing in tempo. And what I'm doing here is I'm using the Arturia Pigments plugin, that's the synthesizer, to get kind of that, get that warbling bass kind of tone. And I'm actually using a preset called the Sky Factory. I started with that and just changed some parameters until it sounded the way I want it to. All right, next up, let's talk about drums. Yeah, this is what I added into this mix, was some simple drums using the Logic Drummer. So I'll play them alone and then we'll get the whole mix in so you can hear it in the context. Yeah, I mean, this is really simple stuff. And as you can see down here in the drummer kind of configuration pane, I've turned off the cymbals, the snare, and the hi-hat. And I'm just using the kick and the toms. And my main goal is to add kind of a pulsating feel underneath the rest of the mix. I added a few things to the drums just to add some character. One, again, was the Logic Pro overdrive, so there's actually some distortion going on in the drum sound. Another one is a compressor from Cush Audio called the Novatron. I like that a lot, but you can use a regular compressor also. It works great. And then finally, this cool kind of reverby granular plugin from Phonolith called the Velvet Machine. And I'm going to turn this up in my headphones a little bit. Let's go ahead and see if we can hear what it's doing with the drums. Can you hear when I turn off? A whole layer of sound goes away. Here we go. Yeah, I like that a lot. It's kind of like it's an underlying swelling, kind of granularized reverb sound riding underneath the drums. Let me go ahead and turn on the entire mix. I'm going to start right before the synthesizer and the drums come in. Oh, as a matter of fact, let me start with the guitar coming in. So you'll hear guitar and Frippertronics, and then you'll hear the drums and that low bass synthesizer come in. There we go. Yeah, just love the mellowness of this. Here we go. Yeah, now if you compare that to the original mix, I like the original mix a lot, but I really do like it a lot with the drums and the synthesizer. It gives it more of a pulse than just me playing fingerstyle in the manner that I did, right? So add some more layers, some more interest into the song. And as you can see, I've created some different drum parts to follow along with the different sections of the song. Now, you might be thinking, hey, Bill, how did you add the drums in after the fact and still keep in time with the guitar? Did you use a click track? And the answer was, no, I didn't use a click track. I just played, according to the tempo in my head. But what Logic Pro has that I absolutely love is a feature called Smart Tempo. And so what you can do is after you record a track, you can actually double click on the audio. It brings your audio up in the editor area down here, and you can click on Smart Tempo and actually have Logic analyze your track to figure out what the tempo is. Now, if you look here, you'll see that I'm starting out at 97.9 beats per minute, and the tempo is changing slightly as I play, because I'm not perfect. I'm not a machine, right? I'm not a click track machine. So my tempo is actually changing a little bit as I play along. And if you look up in the main track window, up at the top where my mouse is, you'll see that same tempo line, and you can see how it shifts over time. Generally, I'm staying in between 95 and about 99 beats per minute. So what happens now, once you get the tempo mapped, you can have your Logic project set up so that it will follow your mapped tempo. And what that means then is when you have a Logic Pro instrument or synthesizer that relies on the tempo settings of your project, since the tempo settings are changing, that instrument will follow along. So in the case of drums here, it's actually following this tempo here. Sweet. So as I'm playing, it is changing from 99 to 100 to 95 to 97 and everywhere in between, as I'm kind of not being perfect, right? Not being a metronome. Now, I like to do that a lot because I feel like it gives the song a little more breathing space. It doesn't feel so much like you're playing to a click track, because you're not. Now, not every type of song works with this. For example, if this was just the Frippertronics track and I tried to map the tempo, it would fail miserably because there's very little discernible tempo. There's no transients or peaks in that track, so it makes it very hard for Logic to kind of figure that out. I don't know if any other pieces of recording software have this capability. If your recording software does have the ability to map tempo, or if you have a plugin that can do that, drop a comment and let me know. I'd really be interested. A couple of other things to note are on the actual stereo mix bus. Now, if you're familiar with mixing through a piece of recording software like this, you'll know that each track has its own audio. You put your plugins on each track, and you can create either groupings of the tracks that will be an aux or a bus, and then everything feeds into the main stereo bus, which is right here. I wanted a reverb across the entire mix, so I used the Logic Pro Chromaverb reverb. If you've been hanging out here on the channel, you'll have seen this for a good bit, and I really like it a lot, just to add some room-style reverb. I also added in some compression using a Kush Audio Bliss compressor. You'll see it's just a little bit of compression. And this is the meter at the bottom is gain reduction. You can see it's 0.5 dB to 1 dB of compression. Not much at all. And then the ever-present tape deck plugin, again, just to give a more tape decky kind of feel. So I hope this was helpful in kind of deconstructing how I think about mixes sometimes, and in particular, how I think about adding drums in after the fact with Logic Pro. If you've got experience mixing like this, again, drop a comment. Let's get a conversation going around it. Also, if you're interested in keeping in touch with me about the new album that's releasing on April the 11th, I'll have a link to my mailing list in the video description. If you want to sign up, you'll get an email when the album releases. Alternately, you could follow me on my Bandcamp page, chordsoforion.bandcamp.com, and I'll be sending out a notice there too when the album releases. So I have the full original mix of The Hard Road here for you to listen to. Also, a playlist of some other recording-related videos. Hope you find it helpful, and I'll see you all on those videos.